Hello, hello everyone. Welcome to our DigitalOcean Tech Talk. It is August 24th, 2021, and I'm really excited to present Sam Olukotun. He is a senior solutions engineer at CircleCI, and he will be giving a talk called The Path to Production, How and Where to Segregate Test Environments. And we're really honored to have you here today, Sam. Thank you. If you're watching and it's live and you have questions, feel free to ask them in the chat, and Sam will take your questions at the end of his talk. I'm going to pass it on over to Sam now. So please tell us about the path to production.
Thank you, Kim, and greetings, everyone. Good morning to you, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Again, my name is Sam Olukotun. I am a senior solutions engineer here at CircleCI. And as Kim mentioned, today we'll be talking about the path to production. As part of our agenda today, I'll be giving a quick introduction to CircleCI. We'll do an introduction to CICD. Then I'll talk about some of the best practices in CICD, talk about how CircleCI enables CICD best practices, and finally give a brief demo of CircleCI's platform before we go into Q&A. CircleCI, our mission is to give development teams the power to build and deliver software with speed and confidence. Our platform allows you to automate your development processes quickly, safely, and at scale. CircleCI is the world's largest shared platform for CI/CD. We run over 2 million CI/CD pipelines per day on AWS. Our customer base is spread across 1 million active developers at 40,000 plus organizations. And all of this combined means that for you and your team, we'll give you the tools that allows you to improve engineering productivity and helps you get your software to market with speed, confidence, and security. CircleCI helps software teams to validate and ship change quickly and confidently. If you think of your code repositories as your sources of change and your customers at the end of your lifecycle, of the software development lifecycle, as the consumers of that change, you can visualize CircleCI as the orchestration engine in the middle that helps you handle your build, your test, your deploy, as well as all concerns related to your release. Looking at this a different way, you can see your VCS, your GitHub, your Bitbucket as the place where you create the value on the left. And you can think of your endpoints where you deploy your code to as where you run or where you operate and deliver your value to the customers. CircleCI, again, is that orchestration engine in the middle that helps you deliver that value to the customers by automating your building, your testing, your delivery, and your release concerns. What is it that really makes CircleCI different from other CI/CD platforms? CircleCI's platform is fast, secure, scales well, and it is easy to use. The speed of CircleCI's platform means that you get shorter build times, and this means that you get shorter and quicker feedback loops. The usability and flexibility of CircleCI's platform means that you spend less time on configuration and on maintenance, and you get to spend more of your time on new work, on building value, and building new features. CircleCI's scale and security furthermore means that as the world's largest CI/CD platform, you get access to all the security certifications that you may need to build your code confidently and securely. At this point, you're wondering, well, what's the impact of all of these wonderful things that CircleCI brings to the table? Well, let's look at some of the metrics from some of our customers. At Coinbase, they have seen 50% reduction in operations maintenance and the time it takes them to go from merging code to deploying that code. They have also noticed a 20% increase in developer throughput using our self-hosted services. At Intuit, they're seeing a 40% decrease in duration. Kogan is seeing a 500% reduction in feedback loops. And Sony is seeing a 99% reduction in their time to production. All of this means, if you look at what a director at Coinbase said, for instance, that if you're going to be investing in getting the smartest engineers you can find, it is better to provide them with the quality tools that they need as opposed to slow or cumbersome tools. You want to provide your team with self-service workflows for your engineers who can use them on their own time and in their own way. Now, for all of those who might not be as familiar with CICD, you might be wondering at this point, well, this all sounds wonderful, but what exactly does all of this mean? When we talk about CICD, we're really talking about two halves of a DevOps practice. The CI half is the continuous integration, and CD is continuous delivery. In continuous integration, what we're concerned with is the practice of merging all developers' working copies to a shared code repository. If we look at this graphic at the bottom of the slide, what that means really is that when your developers check in code into your source control system, your CI/CD runtime handles your testing, scans for vulnerabilities, and automatically builds the images to make sure that all the changes that are coming into your source code repository are validated, are not introducing any quality concerns, and are not going to break the build when it comes time to deploy. Continuous delivery, on the other hand, picks up on this end after the image has been built. So continuous delivery is the practice of automatically deploying new software releases to your target environments. That means once your continuous integration is done and you've built an image successfully that meets all your team standards, you're automatically releasing that to your production environments so that your consumers and your users can access the applications that you've built. Now, in the world of CI/CD, there are 4 key benchmarks that we track. Those benchmarks are workflow duration, throughput, mean time to recovery, and success rate. When we talk about workflow duration, all we're referring to is the time it takes for you to go from the start of a workflow to the end. And typically, teams want to aim for workflow durations in the range of 5 to 10 minutes. Throughput is how many workflows your team is pushing through or running on your CI/CD pipelines. And typically, we want to say that teams should aim to continuously validate their code base every time a commit is pushed. This is how you ensure that your teams are keeping your code and your applications in a deploy-ready state. Mean time to recovery is the time it takes from when you get a failing build or when you introduce an error into the pipeline to when that error is corrected or when that build is restored to a successful green state. We like to say that for teams, you want to aim to recover from any failed runs by fixing your builds or reverting to your last known good state within an hour. And finally, success rate simply means how often a build you push succeeds without failing. The benchmark is that success rates above 90% should be your standard for the default branch of your application. Next, I'd like to talk to you about some of the best practices in CI/CD. Particularly, I'd want to focus on containerizing applications, segregating your test environments, and automating your test and delivery. In terms of containerizing applications, what we're referring to in that case is the packaging of your software code with just the operating system, the libraries, and the dependencies that are required to run the code. These days, when we talk about containerizing, the technologies that typically come to mind are Kubernetes and Docker. Some of the benefits of containerizing your applications is that you get portable applications. You get to reduce your downtime because you have ready copies of your applications you can spin up at any time. This also prevents vendor lock-in, and combined, these 3 benefits mean that you can get to market faster. Another key CI/CD best practice is the act of segregating your test environments. When we talk about segregating test environments, we're referring to the practice of creating stages that serve as quality gates in your pipeline. What you do in this scenario is that you test incrementally as your builds progress through those various stages. And this allows you to run different types of tests in each environment. Take, for instance, this graphic of segregating a test environment for a front-end application. What you can do is you can run unit or component tests, which are typically faster and cheaper and take less resources, and you can run this on every commit. Your integration test will take a little bit more resource. Those you can run, say, when you're ready to submit a pull request. And your UI layer test, which tend to be slower, expensive, and more resource intensive, those you can run when you're merging into a master branch or getting ready for deployment, for instance. Segregating your test environment means that with these isolated stages, you can enable your teams to get faster debugging and faster feedback loops. The fact that you're segregating these tests and only running them when they're necessary means you need to maintain fewer full-scale environments, thereby saving you resources. And finally, the consistency of these environments across your team makes it easier to facilitate collaboration around the code that the team is working on and helps avoid the situation where things are working on one person's machine but not working on a different engineer's machine. And finally, automating test and delivery really is just an encapsulating philosophy of what CI/CD itself means. This means that you're merging all developers' working copies into a shared code repository. You're automatically running tests before packaging new software releases. And as soon as those software releases are packages, you automatically deploy them to your target environment. The benefits of automating your test and delivery really are the benefits of just implementing CI/CD in general. This means that you'll be getting continuous feedback loops, you get faster release cycles, it's easier to recover from failure, and all of this combined will save your team time and money. Next, let's talk about how CircleCI enables CI/CD best practices. Specifically, we'll be going through some features that help you reduce cost and increase velocity. One of those features is the Docker layer caching and remote Docker features built into CircleCI's platform. CircleCI is a Docker native platform which allows for easy Docker integration. This further enables you to use powerful caching capabilities to cache your Docker image layers, and this helps you speed up your subsequent pulls and builds of Docker images because you're not reconstructing every layer from scratch all the time. In addition to that, CircleCI enables you to run builds concurrently and also in parallel. When we talk about concurrency, what we're really referring to, if we follow this graphic at the bottom of the page, is the ability to run two jobs at the same time. Parallelism, on the other hand, allows you to take one job, let's say a resource-intensive job or a long-running job, and split it across multiple nodes. Combining these features means that you can get from the beginning of your workflow all to the way to the end quicker. Building on concurrency and parallelism is the ability for CircleCI to help you automatically parallelize your tests. This means that you can split your testing workload across multiple nodes, and CircleCI will dynamically split those tests according to performance and time, thereby allowing you to get through your test suites faster. In addition to that, CircleCI allows you to choose from a wide array of resource classes, giving you the ability to customize the compute that your jobs use within your pipeline. These configurable resources are available for each executor type on CircleCI. And when I say executor type, what I'm referring to there is the environment within which your build jobs are running. So for instance, you're going to be running on a Linux machine, a Docker machine, a Windows executor, or on Mac OS. Having the ability to choose between a small resource class with 1 CPU and 2 GB of RAM, all the way up to an extra large plus with 20 CPUs or 40 GB of RAM, means that you can pick the right size resource for your job, thereby saving you money for jobs that don't need large resources, and also giving you the levers to improve performance for jobs that need more compute resources. For a look at the choices that you have available of resource classes on CircleCI, you can consider our Docker executors that have small resource classes with 1 CPU and 2 GB of RAM, all the way to 2 XL plus. We have Linux machine executors with medium to 2 extra large, as well as GPUs available also. In addition, we have macOS executors, we have Windows executors, ARM executors, and executors with Android that have an emulator built in. All of this means that regardless of what project your team might be working on, regardless of what size of compute you might need, you have those choices and you can pick from which ones will be best suited for your team's needs. Finally, OBS is a feature on CircleCI that allows you to package, ship, and reuse configuration. If you think of your configuration file as just a package of code, you can think of your OBS as a module that you can import into your configuration and use without having to implement everything from scratch. This means that your team can eliminate duplicate work, and also you can codify processes and share configuration across multiple teams and multiple projects. The power of orbs at CircleCI really comes from the large ecosystem that CircleCI has built. With over 65 orbs that we have written ourselves, and the orbs that our technology partners like DigitalOcean have written with us, as well as orbs that have been written by our customers who are contributing back into the registry, you will find that for any third-party tool that you might be trying to integrate with, it's most likely that some of it has already been written in the CircleCI's orb registry, and that is going to save you time in getting up and running quickly on CircleCI. Next, I'd like to give you a brief demonstration of CircleCI's platform for those who are not familiar with it yet. What I am showing here is a pipeline I am building on a demo project. What I am doing at a high level here is for every commit I push to this project, I want to run a static analysis on my code. Then I want to build my code across 4 versions of Go in parallel. I want to run my test suite in parallel. And then what I do next is I build and push an image to DigitalOcean's image registry, as well as to the Google Cloud registry. And this is where CircleCI allows you to leverage the ability to deploy to multiple cloud environments without being forced or locked into any particular vendor. What I do next is I hold the deployment, and this is me taking advantage of what we call an approval job on CircleCI. This gives you the power to pause your workflows and wait for you to come in and determine when you want this deployment to take place. If I was ready to deploy now, for instance, what I would do would be to come in here, click on that button, approve the deployment, and once that registers in the UI, you will see the Create DigitalOcean deployment automatically kick off. You can do the same thing for the other parallel stream of the GKE deployment, where I can come in, approve, and as you can see, the deployments kick off once that registers within the UI. Setting all of this up happens within a config file that is written in YAML. The fact that the CircleCI configuration happens in YAML means that your team does not need to learn any new programming languages in order to quickly get up and running on CircleCI. This configuration file is broken out into 3 sections, which I'll be talking about today. First are the orbs, which we talked about in the slides section, which really are just chunks or modules of configuration code that have been pre-written that I can import into this configuration file and leverage the commands within them. Jobs are the different activities, or you can think of them as the different tasks that you want to execute within this particular pipeline. And at the bottom of this are the workflows, where I get to orchestrate the order in which these jobs run. To give you an idea of how you would employ an orb, let's take the DigitalOcean orb, for instance. If we scroll down to this job where I am creating a DigitalOcean deployment, the way I am using that orb is by referencing or calling the install command and the initialize command that have been defined in the DigitalOcean orbs. This means that in order to take advantage or in order to use these commands, I don't have to rewrite all of this logic in my configuration file. This allows me to streamline my configuration file and reuse the logic that has already been implemented. In the workflow sections, I would like to highlight the ability of CircleCI to enable these things we call a matrix job. This is a feature that allows me to define one job with a standard set of parameters and then pass in an array of parameters, and CircleCI automatically expands that job and runs those parameters in parallel on the platform. So that is a configuration file at a high level, not diving into all of the features, but that is what it takes to set up a working configuration on CircleCI. However, for those of us who have been in the industry or have been writing code long enough, we know not every time do you get a green build from start to finish. On CircleCI, unlike on some other platforms, figuring out when things go wrong is easy, quick, and intuitive. First off, if we revisit that image, that view of a workflow going from start to finish, whenever there's an error in the pipeline, you can quickly identify which one of those jobs has failed. Furthermore, CircleCI allows you to dive deeper into each particular job, giving you a view of all the commands that run within that job. In addition to that, what you get access to the output of every one of those commands, whether they succeed or not. And what this means is that when a job fails, you get to quickly identify which command failed as well as why that command failed. To quickly recover from this, you're already on your way simply knowing what has gone wrong and where it has gone wrong, unlike in other platforms where you'd have to dig through lines and pages of logs. Furthermore, CircleCI makes it even easier to recover from failures by enabling you to rerun this particular job, or rerun the entire workflow from start, or to rerun the workflow just from the failed jobs. These options are handy if you're dealing with a pipeline that has flaky tests, for instance, and things would pass if you rerun them a second time. A third option is to rerun the job with SSH. This allows you to spin up the exact same build with the exact same parameters. And the only difference in this case is that you get an SSH command that allows you to debug within the container in real time. This allows you to quickly figure out when things might be going wrong without having to do a lot of extra configuration or extra scripting. Another feature that CircleCI has built in to make it quickly and efficient to manage your CI/CD pipelines is the Insight dashboard. This is where you can go to quickly identify at a high level what projects are consuming credits, how long they're taking to run, how frequently they're running, as well as the success rates. In addition to seeing this at the project level, CircleCI allows you to dive deeper into each project and take a look at the individual workflows within each project, see those across the different branches, and to evaluate those same metrics across the workflows. In addition to that, you can also get this data for each of the individual jobs that are running within that workflow. You can filter this by workflow, by branch, and also by time windows. CircleCI allows you to download all of this data for further analysis, or if you have your own internal dashboarding tools, you can access all of this via CircleCI's API. So that's a wrap on the demo itself. It is by no means an exhaustive list of the features that CircleCI has to offer, but it's a clear way and an easy way to show the different features that CircleCI has that allows you to build and deploy your code quickly and efficiently. Next, we'll be opening up the floor for questions and answers.
All right. Thank you, Sam. That's great. So we have one question in the chat, and it's from Michael. And Michael says, how can I set up remote debugger with headless browsers in CircleCI? You talked a little bit about it just at the very end of your talk, but how can you debug issues in CircleCI?
So debugging issues in CircleCI usually comes from using the SSH feature. So if you run a build and something fails, or you get an error message that you feel it's a little bit cryptic or you don't completely understand, jumping into the SSH session, looking around the environment, checking up the environment variables within the build container is typically a great way to do those debugging. And also everything you can debug directly at your terminal, you can do that directly in the container via SSH. So short answer is using the SSH rerun with SSH option is a great way to address that problem.
Great, and we will drop the documentation to debugging with SSH in the chat in just a moment. We have another question from Stanislav. Is there iOS support?
Yes, to get iOS support on CircleCI, you typically want to use our Mac OS executors, and that's where you'll be able to build your iOS apps on CircleCI.
Okay, so it's those containers that use the Mac operating system.
Exactly.
Great. Well, I have some questions. So if you're someone who's sort of learning all about CICD, maybe you haven't been part of that at a company, how can you use CircleCI to practice and just sort of get a feel for those different pipelines?
CircleCI gives you access to our platform. If you have open source projects, for instance, you can take advantage of our freemium plan. It allows you to build some of your open source projects on CircleCI. So that's a great way for customers or people who are just trying to get introduction to CircleCI or just CI/CD in general to get their hands on the platform and play around with some of those features. If, however, you want to leverage a bit more of the parallelism and a bit more of the advanced features on CircleCI, we do give 2-week trials. And for that, we have a contact link on our webpage where you can go to access and sign up for those.
Excellent. Do you think we could pull that page up and show the folks in chat?
Certainly. Let's go.
Great.
Okay, let me share my screen. What that would look like is you would go to CircleCI. And it's right here, contact us, drop in your information. And once you fill that in, someone from CircleCI's team would reach out with information on how to continue with a trial.
Great. So if you're just starting, if you have an open source project, CircleCI is free for you with the freemium model. And to dig into some of the more advanced features, going to that page would be the place to go. And then we'll get in contact with someone from CircleCI.
That's right.
Excellent. All right, we have another question from Justin. And Justin says, what is the recommended way to execute integration tests in CircleCI?
To execute integration tests in CircleCI, you would do it just like you would do at your local terminal. Whatever commands you need to run to run those tests, you just write them into the config file. And typically, integration tests with sim teams, usually they wait until they're ready to submit a pull request, for instance, to run something like that. And so whenever you could have that as part of your pull request workflow, separate from your individual unit test workflows. And so then you just have those commands as part of the configuration that runs for those jobs.
Okay. So what I think I heard you say was you would have tests that you write and run locally. And then to make them integration tests with CircleCI, you would set it up so like if you made a pull request, then it would require those integration tests to run, and then you could set up more requirements after that. Like if the test didn't pass, it won't deploy, or if the test passed, maybe it deploys.
Right, and the way the feature that would allow you to do that is just the branch filtering, or you could do the tag filtering. That allows you to determine when those tests run, as opposed to running on every commit, which is something you would want for your unit tests. But for integration tests, you could separate those by maybe when you merge into a specific branch or when you push a specific tag.
Oh, excellent. So branch filtering, tag filtering, that allows you to reduce the number of times that you're actually running those tests and building those CircleCI containers.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let's go on to, it looks like Grant has asked a question, and then we'll go back to Michael's questions. So let's see. Grant says, you mentioned how convenient it is to have a start from failed model, especially if you have flaky tests. Does CircleCI have a recommended technique for reducing false positives when tests fail?
Nothing comes to mind right now. When it comes to test failing, typically what I've seen that has happened in those situations, at least in my experience, has been things like network connections that time out, or if you just have like latency issues where your test is waiting for a response within a certain amount of time and it doesn't get that. And so those, when you rerun, are typically easy ways to fix that. Otherwise, what I've noticed is if you're running a test and you have to rerun to get it to pass, typically it might be a sign that you can write those tests differently in order to make sure you're getting reliable tests.
So it sounds like it's just like noticing that you have flaky tests. So maybe you run the exact same test twice and you get different results. That's an indication of flaky tests.
Right. It's a concern that that test is not as reliable as it could be.
Okay. So yeah, it sounds like a general testing question. Outstanding. Yeah, you're welcome, Grant. And then going back to a question from Michael, he is asking, can you provide examples, maybe in like a configuration file, about where parallelism is used?
Oh, certainly. On the CircleCI documentation page, we do have links to tutorials and code samples, as well as walkthroughs, where we have the different workflows and configuration files, as well as the access to the GitHub repositories for them as well. So that's all available on CircleCI's docs. just look for tutorials or sample projects.
Great. And we'll look that up and drop that in the chat. And I could say at my job prior to DigitalOcean, I used CircleCI a lot. And the example configurations were extremely helpful when I was trying to build different workflows, especially when there were jobs running in parallel. All right. A question from Justin. What is a good use case for multiple workflows?
It's a good question. Multiple workflows come in handy when you have more than one thing that you can do from one single code base. So for instance, we just talked about the example of doing unit tests and integration tests and UI tests. All of those, ideally, you wouldn't want those to run every time you push a commit. So that's where you would have the idea of having multiple workflows where you can have just a build and test for every individual commit. And then you can have a build, test, and deploy for when you're ready to deploy to production, for instance. You'd want those to be separate workflows. In addition, you might have a scenario where your team is setting up nightly testing or running tests on a scheduled basis. That would be a separate workflow from tests that would run every time you push code. So essentially, you can think of multiple workflows as coming in handy for when you would want your pipeline to behave differently depending on a set of parameters.
Excellent. Thank you. So this is a question from me. So you're a senior solutions engineer. What does that mean at CircleCI? What does your day-to-day look like while you're at work?
So day-to-day, that means I'm talking to customers, helping them understand how CircleCI adds value, how they can use CircleCI to deliver, specifically to engineering teams, how they can use CircleCI to deliver more business value for their companies. Also, it's involved in conversations like this where I'm helping the broader community understand the value of CICD in general, the benefits of integrating CICD best practices in their development lifecycle as well. That's usually the bulk of the day as a solutions engineer at CircleCI.
Awesome. Do you communicate with customers on video calls or through chats or some other method or all of the above?
All of the above is primarily, for me and my team, it's primarily Zoom calls with them or just interactions where we help them debug via email also.
Excellent. And what did you do before CircleCI?
Before CircleCI, I was a full stack engineer, which coincidentally was where I ran into CircleCI and realized how great of a product it is. So here I am working for CircleCI.
Outstanding. All right. I think last call for questions. And while we're waiting, Sam, is there anything you'd like to share that you didn't say during your presentation, or a question you'd like to answer that hasn't been asked?
One thing I didn't mention during the presentation, but that gets me and my team really excited these days, is that we recently acquired VAMP, which is a team that was working mostly on the deployment side of things. So far I've talked about continuous integration and continuous delivery, which is a sphere that CircleCI handles very well. However, with the acquisition of VAMP, as we work their product capabilities into our platform, that's going to allow you to now continue to do things like continuous monitoring of the applications you've deployed. So now you can think of CircleCI as then empowering you to go not just from building your code and delivering it, but also to monitor it when it goes into production. So that's coming down the line, and it's something that's getting us excited here at CircleCI. I just wanted to share it with the community at large that CircleCI is bringing more exciting capabilities to the table.
Oh, that's really exciting. Yeah, that's a whole other part of CircleCI that I haven't seen before. Being able to monitor that. Great. Well, we have added those links in the chat. We did get some more questions, and we have plenty of time. I like this question from Justin. What does the term orb originate from? And then while you're at it, please review again, what is a CircleCI orb and how might we use it?
All right, the CircleCI orb is a package of configuration that you can import into your config file. And the key benefit of using an orb is that it saves you the time of having to re-implement all the logic from scratch. So I come from a JavaScript background, and this is the example I like to use. So let's say you're writing your code, you're writing a JavaScript package. What you can do, you can think of the orb as an NPM package that you import. Instead of having to rewrite all of that code, you can just call the command from the package you've imported. So that's the power that the orb gives to you. As for where the name comes from, I'm not quite sure. My guess would be because of its magical capabilities. I don't know, but I'll have to talk to our marketing team and come figure out where the history of that name comes from.
I like that. So we like the name Or because it suggests something magical, and the magical part is like someone else has already set up a lot of configuration for you that you can just pull in with like 1 or 2 lines of YAML in CircleCI. We have another question from Patrick. Let's see. Patrick says, does CICD offer any kind of playground for computer science students? I think the CircleCI offer any kind of playground for computer science students.
So that's a great example of where the freemium model that we have will come into play, where if you're building or you're working on any open source projects, we do allow you to leverage or use our platform. We'll get you a certain amount of build minutes, and you get access to some of the features on CircleCI to get you up and running on CICD.
Excellent. So yeah, using GitHub or Bitbucket and having an open source project there. Great. Oh, no worries, Patrick. Yeah, CircleCI. All right, we've got, I think we'll see if this is our last question or not. We have another question from Michael about Docker layer caching. Let's see. So the question says, why does Docker layer caching start from scratch when my tests fail? If my custom Docker image never changes, why should my workflow re-download it?
Great question. The thing there is for Docker layer caching, what we're really caching is the image you're building as part of the pipeline. So if you're importing a custom Docker image to run the environment in, that itself isn't cached. However, if you're building the image on CircleCI, it's the layers within that image that you're building that get cached if they haven't been changed and you're trying to build it again. I hope that answers your question, Michael. If it doesn't, please rephrase and we'll try to address the corner I didn't.
I am muted, so let me say all of that again. I said, I think that looks like the end of all of our CircleCI questions. Sam, where can people find you on the internet if they'd like to learn more about you or about CircleCI?
So I am on LinkedIn, Sam Olukotun, CircleCI. I'll pull it up. Hopefully they aren't that, well, I haven't run into any other Sam Olukotuns working at CircleCI lately, but just do that via LinkedIn, or you can send me an email, sam.olukotun@circleci.com.
Outstanding. Well, thanks so much for being here, Sam. I really enjoyed it, and people will be able to see this talk in the future, and maybe we'll have you back sometime soon.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. This has been a pleasure, and I'd be happy to come back.
All right, everybody, take care.